Impressive.
And you're the last. So after you, I'm going to go see what's going on in the news.
Yeah. I'm the last, but the last shall be first, and the first shall be last, as I
There we
understand it.
go. Okay. And welcome to the program, Charles Moscowitz, live on YouTube and all subscribing platforms. My guest is Fred Gleeck. He is a veteran business consultant who says that in the wake of the 2020 election, massive stock market upheaval and continuing economic uncertainty surrounding the pandemic, major changes in the way we generate income, especially for Americans over 50, can and should be implemented now. All right, so Fred, I want to get right to what you mean by the change in the way we generate income, particularly over 50, because that's me. And, I think that there certainly have been changes in modern decades due to things like the internet, where you now can work from home. You could work 24 hours a day whenever you want. You could work from the North Pole. You don't have to. We've moved beyond the time when you have 1,000 people checking a time clock and going into a factory. Not that that's not still there, but there have been major changes in how we do business, and I think the pandemic has exacerbated that, both in a good way and in a bad way. So, please define what you mean by a new means of functioning in terms of work and income.
Well, I think, Charles, if you think about it, you're right. The internet kind of started the revolution of people being able to work from home. And then we were forced to work from home. And those of us who are in that age bracket in which we are now being asked to leave our jobs, many of us are now without employment whatsoever. I'm fortunate in that my business has always been one that has been, based on my own efforts and ability to generate cash and income. This has actually since the pandemic, things have gone. I always hate to say this because I feel bad for those who are not in this situation, but my business has doubled or tripled as a result. And so for people, who are looking at retirement or have been retired involuntarily by an organization, the ability to use some of the systems that I talk about and some of the means that I discuss become even more important and more critical to them going forward.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about that. What is the system that you? I mean, this is like perfect.
Funny you should
Funny
ask.
you
Here it
should
is.
ask. Thank you.
Yes. So the way that I used to, years ago, when I've been doing this kind of work for many, many years, first offline and now online. And by this kind of work, I mean the ability to package your knowledge, your brain power, and to sell it to other people who want to know what you knew. Let's take you as an example. So now you've been doing this whole online broadcasting podcast system for a while. You've probably figured it out to the point where your knowledge could be very valuable to others of your ilk of various sorts who would like to do something similar. So
Right.
my goal is to find and work with people who are subject matter experts like you to help them package that knowledge and to sell it to other people who want to know your system or how you do it. And that's a combination of two things. Number one, are there enough people, A, and B, can we put it into a system and package it properly so it's easily understood and easily implemented?
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I've done talk radio in various markets for many, many years, small markets. And then after my last radio station was sold to a new owner who did not do talk radio anymore, I lost my job. And now I've launched this this internet show, which it's not only live on YouTube, but it's carried by probably about a dozen platforms as a podcast. And I can interview anyone in the world, and I am. I'm interviewing intellectuals, newsmakers, media people, authors. I'm also the author of over 15 books, nonfiction books, and some of them have been published. Others are self-published on Amazon and Ingram Spark. But I have not yet put together the piece in terms of how to monetize everything. Uh,
Yeah,
I
you're not alone.
Now my model for a while, in a way, even before the pandemic, was I set up a website through WordPress and I offered my services as a radio host bringing people in and having them do what you and I are doing right now.
Right.
You can be on YouTube. You could tell your story. You could create a visual resume if you want, or you could just come on with me as an expert and I will help you do that. And I had some success with that. I mean, I had some people that bought that from me, but I think because of the pandemic, now everyone's doing it. Zoom is huge, and it's a wonderful system, by the way. It's the best I've used, and I've tried many. But I think that in a way means that I have to sort of reposition what I'm doing and think differently as a way to compete. And so that's where I sort of am right now.
Well, I think I mean, you've come to the right place. I think that your knowledge, rather than positioning yourself as kind of an interviewer for hire, if you will, in some ways, you now might be better off positioning yourself as someone who knows how to do and get on all these multiple platforms simultaneously, because people, who are less internet savvy and less knowledgeable about these various platforms would say, wow, I want to do what he's doing. I have no idea how to do it. So my thought is your market is much enlarged if you were to go after the people who want to do what you're doing, as opposed to those like me who are coming on to be interviewed.
Interesting thought. I mean, it's not brain science. I mean, and I'm not great at it. I mean,
Let me interrupt you. That's where most people feel you can't be doing this. And I'll say, here's the deal. If you can do this and figure this out better than 90% of the people out there, you don't have to be the top dog. You don't even have to be in the top 10%. If you're in the top 80+% of people who know how to do this, you're going to be able to teach the people who are in the bottom 50% because they know nothing. So, in the land of the blind, as my mom always used to say, the one-eyed is king. So you are the king of this topic because you know more than most people, not more than all, but more than most.
I could see myself doing that. I mean, I could help somebody launch their own program, how to connect their social network to it, how to build an audience, how to book people, how to interview people, and how to make that happen. I have done that. I mean, I haven't
And
been
for
able
the people who are listening and watching, please send him an email and ask him how much that program costs.
Thank you. I mean, I'll have to figure that one out.
Exactly. And but you bring up, that's another good point, which is many people feel like they have to have the program already created in order to sell it. And that's the point I'm trying to make to you, which is you don't have to have that program ready to go. Let me give you an example to illustrate. So one of my top, I call them partners, but clients, let's use clients because it's easier to understand in this context. One of my top clients is one of the top copywriters in the country. His name is Bob Bly. So Bob is a brilliant copywriter. After a lot of arm twisting, I said, look, you need to pass along your knowledge to other people who want to know how to write great copy. He says, finally, after a lot of convincing, I said, look, what we need to do is start a protege, like a primer program. Never been done before. Let's do 10 people, $5,000 a piece. This guy is world-class. So, I mean, that price point is very easily done for him. Mm-hmm. So we put together a people willing to pay for that program without him having even designed module 1 of that program. I will bet you that if we lined up 10 people for you at whatever price point we determined it to be, that before we started module 1, you could figure out what module 1 was. And by the time we got to module 1, we'd have 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera.
No, I could do it easily. I mean, I could help someone. I could coach someone in terms of getting on the Zoom, interviewing people, hooking it up to YouTube, how to get that done, how to get all these other, I mean, I'm on iHeart, I'm on Spotify, I'm on, all of it. I could do that easily. When do we start?
Absolutely. And the problem, and the thing is that most people feel that they have to have the whole program outlined before they start and get paid. And what I'm saying is you don't. If you know this, which clearly you do, you can launch this program basically just being one step ahead of the people that you're tutoring to do it.
Sure. And I can think of several venues that I could promote myself in as for the service, and they're free. I mean, things like Fiverr. I mean, I've hired Fiverr guys to help me. I hired a Fiverr guy from Pakistan recently who created the cover of my new book. And,
Yep.
he did a great job. It cost me under $100.
Yep.
So, there were other venues like that where I could launch, this product. Very interesting.
100%. So all you'd have to do, so let's use you as the example for our audience to be able to illustrate, which is, so the first thing that we have to decide is, number one, and the best way to do it is let's come up with a title. So I would encourage you to think about what would the title of this program that you would be teaching be? Just play with it. Just throw something out there for me.
You can have your own show. You could be a YouTube star. You could be a YouTube host. Be a YouTube host. Anything in that.
And I like the idea of including the word multi-channel in there, because I think that that's one of the things that you mentioned I thought that was really appealing. Yes. So a multi-channel, talk show host, develop your own audience, et cetera, et cetera. We could go from there. So now the next thing would be, okay, let's pick the standard number of modules is 8. There's usually the primer, number 1, and then there's the conclusion, number 8. Now we just have to fill in modules 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, because we know what number 1 is. Number 8 is the conclusion. Number 1 is the let's get started, mindset, etc. Now all we have to do is figure out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we have a weekly program where people are going to pay you for this small intimate group of 10 people. It's going to be our beta group. It's our primer group, because you tell them, look, things won't go perfectly. This is my first group. As a result, you're getting it much less than what I'm going to charge people going forward. So now we put that group together. And then I would ask you this. I would say, okay, how many people on a Zoom call could we coach for an hour or two on how to do this maximum? In other words, what's the maximum number of people you feel you could get the information across to well enough that we wouldn't be kind of trying to smush them in?
Well, I mean, with Zoom, I could have probably upwards of 50 people, but I wouldn't want to do that. I probably would want to have more like 3 or maybe 5 at most.
And give them some personal attention, right?
That's right. That's
excellent.
Right. Because I also think that's an interesting format, because then you get interaction between people, and you're acting as a teacher in a small classroom.
Yeah, and the thing that's really interesting is, and many people think that when you give advice one-on-one, it's more productive and looked at as it's more beneficial than one on many. And I don't think that's true. I think that oftentimes when you have a group of 3 to 5 people, or up to 10 people, whatever, 20, that the interaction between the people is as valuable. And you know this,
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it becomes more dynamic, if anything, because you got 2 or 3 minds working together rather than just 2.
100%.
That's, to me, that's a real classroom. And I could easily put together 8 classrooms. I mean, I could help somebody set up the infrastructure basically by where their show would land. Then I would help them develop the backup for that with the social networking. Right. Then we would get them on the air. We would book a guest. Then we would, do like an actual show, get them on a schedule, find out what it is they're passionate about, because that's what's should be the theme of their show. I mean, in my case, I talk history, philosophy, politics, but everyone has their own interest.
Sure.
And then how do you reach people? How do you build an audience? How do you, market it? How do you develop it? And how do you, promote it? And a lot of the ways to do it are free too.
Absolutely. And any of the people watching or listening right now are getting an idea of how this can be done, and can be done relatively easily. And I see that you have the record button pressed for Zoom. Oh, yeah. And what's going to happen is, after you do those 8 class modules for your 5 or 10 people, you now have them recorded. Guess what? For other groups, that can be sold at a lesser price, since they didn't get personal interaction with you, at say 50% of what you charge the initial group.
Fred, when should we get started?
I mean, clearly, I'm glad I was able to come up with you as an example, because a lot of times with people who don't really have, the knowledge and experience you do to do something, it becomes, a little bit of a stretch. But yours is a perfect example of exactly what I do.
And what exactly is it that you do?
Okay, so here in coming up with these kinds, so I'm working with people who are subject matter experts, eminently qualified in their field, to train other people on how to do what they do. my top two clients or partners, because every deal that I do happens to be a revenue share with the expert. So I don't take money up front. What I do is I work with the subject matter expert, and we do a split of the revenue on all of the materials, products, and services that we create. So what happens is that means I have to be very careful in my choice of partner. But if I choose the right partner, like one guy I've had now for almost 11 years, he's in the voiceover field. He trains people. His name is Bill DeWeese, and Bill DeWeese he's got the biggest following, thanks to my help, on YouTube for voiceover training. So if you want to learn how to do voice work, Bill DeWeese, Bill DeWeese, DeWees. So if you go to Bill DeWeese on YouTube, voiceover training, you'll see he has over 40,000 people following his YouTube channel on how to start and build a successful voiceover business. He came to one of my events 11 years ago, and we've now created, I'm not one to share numbers because my mom told me that's inappropriate, but we've developed quite a nice little business that pays us a good bit of money every month from people who come in that we, mainly he, trains on how to start and build a voiceover business.
No, I see that you mentioned him in your Forbes magazine article, and other people as well, which is very impressive. Well, I mean, could we form a partnership?
Well, it's something we should definitely explore after this particular interview, to look at how can we, and to be honest, what I have to do is I have to be careful to make sure that my selection of partners that I go with, since I don't demand any money up front, that I have to be careful, because I've frankly, I've partnered with a lot of people who it didn't work out with for a number of reasons. Some of them are just crooks, which is always a problem in any business. And some of them just don't have the ability to deliver. Now, you're neither of those two. So we've ruled out two of the main reasons why it doesn't work out. But a lot of times I have partners I've worked with for as many as 3 or 4 years, in which not a single dollar of revenue has come in the first 3 or 4 years. But luckily, over time, it has built after that.
No, I mean, of course. And look, I mean, I've been at this game for quite a while with, working toward developing a critical mass that I can monetize it. So, I mean, I totally get the fact that you have to have intellectual investment. You have to have energy to do something like this. And of course, the other skill that I could market, and I actually have tried to do this through a site that allows you to do teaching, is how to write a book. I've written over 15 books. I love writing books. I just finished one, and I like to coach people in terms of how to actually do it. And I think that in this day and age, with the internet being what it is, and with access to, archives at very low cost, one can do it. They can, if they have a passionate feeling about a topic, or if they want to delve into something and really learn it, there's no better way to do that than write a book. And once you write it, you can self-publish on Amazon and market.
Well, one of my best-selling books is Publishing for Maximum Profit, having to do with exactly that. Did that 15 years ago, and still own the domain name publishingseminar.com.
Wow. Gee, you and I are in similar ideas here.
Yeah. And I think it's a great idea as well. The only thing in that market might be it's a little bit saturated. There are a lot of people doing that.
A lot of writing. Yeah. I mean, I've noticed this, a lot of competition for writing. I mean, everybody's out there, a lot of good writers, a lot of good English majors,
So the key there would be to try and niche it down a little further. For example, I see the book in the background there, God is God. That's your book, right?
That's my latest book. Yep.
That's your latest book. So maybe what we do is, rather than targeting every potential writer, it's only those who have a Christian or a religious bent. So in other words, you'd want to small it down a little bit.
No, the more you can specialize, the better. I mean, I totally get that.
Yep. Cardiologist gets paid more than
my thing is nonfiction. My books are kind of across the map.
Yep. And like I said,
my books are across the map. I mean, I've written on religion, politics, culture, money. I did a book on the history of the American monetary system. So, I have eclectic interest, but yes, I mean, it's something that could be distilled and very highly focused. And I'd love to help people write. I usually start them with small blogs, then I expand it into articles, and eventually big articles, and sooner or later books. It's a process.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, just with you on the podcast thus far in less than 20 minutes, we've established two very viable topics for you to generate cash from.
We have. And I think that, I mean, to me, it seems like a no brainer that I should be able to do it. It's just a matter of putting together some of the pieces to make it happen. And that's where I've kind of stalled. I mean, I'll get there, but,
That's
to
why I exist. I mean, that's frankly, but I mean, you know what? It's not
holy
unusual.
mackerel. I can't believe I've met you.
So it does make sense because some people are better at the marketing and the systems and other people are better at the subject matter. And those two people should come together and produce results for everyone.
Absolutely. And there's so much potential. I mean, in the area of having your own podcast, I mean, I could reach people all over the world. I mean, there are people in India that would like to do this who speak English. I don't speak
Sure.
any other language. People in China. I mean, to me, this is an international thing. It's and
Agree.
it's booming. I mean, it's like a frontier of opportunity. Um, I forget who said this to me. I think it was a professor that podcasts are going to be something that everyone is going to be doing at some point, and that colleges are going to give assignments that will be done through a podcast. I actually did some assignments through a podcast at my local college here. So I think that it's a growing field. I think that it's one that it's still in its infancy. It still is one that can be tapped, but it's booming. It's a great
Yeah.
field.
And if you look at Joe Rogan and $100 million from Spotify, it's certainly one that's well paid at the top end.
Well, yeah, but that's like getting a Major League Baseball
Correct.
team.
I'm just saying, we know that it is possible to
It
make
is
the big
possible.
bucks. Yeah.
But the thing is, you can make a modest living at it. I mean, you don't,
Great. Great.
I don't even have those high expectations. I would just like to monetize it to a certain degree. If I get more successful, great. But I mean, I want to have influence through my podcast and my books, and I'd like to get some revenue from it. I mean, that's about where I am.
And I would assume that you've also kept a pretty good database of
Oh, yeah.
emails from people who have bought your books.
That I don't have because that's through Amazon. So,
Although I'll give you a little tip on that. The
mhm.
next time you do a book or the next time you print the book through Amazon, put a page in the very front of your book that says, in order to get my free PDF download worth X amount of dollars, send an email or go to this website. It's what we call a bounce back offer. So embed something, since Amazon doesn't tell you who their customer is, it would be nice to find a way to get that Amazon customer to contact you directly for something free. And that's something that I always used to use and call a bounce back,
Yeah.
which is get people to bounce back from Amazon to you in order to get something for free to put them on a list.
No, I mean it's a great idea. I mean, I certainly do have email lists. I mean, I used to collect emails like people collect stamps and coins. I have, probably a 40,000 list size email database. I mean, just random people that when I was involved in politics, when I was involved in all sorts of businesses, I keep everyone's emails. Now, of course, I sign people onto my LinkedIn and my social network. I probably have about 25, 30,000 members, so I definitely have built all of that to an extent. I
Good.
could do a lot better, but
Good. The only thing is with the emails you have to be a little bit concerned about is people need to be contacted on a regular basis to remember who you are.
oh, I know. And I kind of probably have slacked off on that one. I don't
I think
go
we
to
all have,
the
not just you.
laborious. I mean, I for a while I think I hired one of those services to do it for me. Was it like a MailChimp?
Yep.
And it didn't really work out mainly because I violated the terms, but that was a while ago.
Okay. Everybody has.
But wow, no, this is amazing. I mean, it's with the right kind of focus, I think that it's a very interesting idea, and you've got a great entrepreneurial mind. I mean, obviously, and you've got a great talent.
Yeah, I'm fortunate in that what happened, the way that I got to this point was I was selling a lot of my own material, and I got to the point where literally my own hard drive had run, my hard drive was empty. I had come up with as many ideas as I could. And I said, you know what? Why don't I switch now and try and partner with other people who have their ideas? And that's where I found, Bill, the voiceover guy, and Bob, the copywriter, and Keith, the opera singer, and Burke, who got us into Burke, the publicity guy, the publicist who got me on here. I'm working with him to help him with his materials. So, I have a large group of very diverse and different clients or partners that I work with to try and help them package their knowledge.
No, it sounds like it's a fascinating group of people, and I would imagine that they probably cross pollinate in that, like for example, I could make my program available to interview people that are suggested to me, and then likewise, they could interview me, and I've done a lot of that kind of cross effort. Um, there was a while where I had a co-host out in San Francisco. We used to do like a left-right debate,
Nice.
and I'd bring people on from my side, he'd bring people on from his side, and we had some amazing, fascinating guests.
Boy, today would be quite the day to do that.
It's not so easy anymore to do that. I wish it was,
Oh man, I know.
because people don't talk to each other anymore. I used to have. I mean, I'm right of center, and I used to have on big name liberals all the time. Noam Chomsky, Gloria Steinem,
Yep.
and we had a great time. I mean, we would debate. We'd sometimes get emotional, but we would always, it was. I like to go deep. I don't do a soundbite type thing. I do a pretty
Yeah.
vigorous interview where I try to find out why someone believes what they do and what makes them tick. They won't come on with me anymore. They won't talk to me. I mean, it's not personally, but no one talks to anybody on the other side anymore.
Such
Everything
a
has
pity.
become it is. It really is. And it's like two alternative universes now.
Yeah, it's funny because on that topic, I remember that. I mean, it happened with my dad many, many years ago with his best friend from college, and he would have been 108 years old yesterday. But I remember him telling me the story about how his best friend, Jack Jones, I still remember the name, how he and Jack were best friends growing up, but because of their differences in terms of politics, at one point stopped speaking to each other. And I've seen the same thing happen with me. I just choose no longer to post or put anything on social media having anything to do with politics because I literally would rather remain friends than realize. And how many times, and this is a good question for you. How many times have you converted someone who is not of your political ilk? How many times have you converted them to your viewpoint? How about almost zero, right?
Yeah, basically, people get
Right.
very
So
locked into what they're about.
so why even in some cases with people that you know and like, why even discuss it? I feel sometimes.
Well, I agree with that on a personal level,
Yes,
but in the realm of public debate,
agree,
we have to reach out and have
agree.
these debates, and otherwise we're going to end up
Well, I'll give you
we'll
a
have a
personal
civil war.
story on that. So I had an unusual background. I was born in Japan, raised in the Philippines. Dad was an American diplomat. So I grew up in Manila as a diplomat kid. And I was surrounded by other, kids whose parents were private business or other fellow diplomats from other countries. And I've got a really good friend, Jagdish. He's an Indian American dude, lives in the Bay Area. And I got on a Zoom call with him during COVID. People were doing these like Zoom dinner parties.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
So I
Yep.
got on with him and his wife, and we started talking politics. And I realized that unless I slowed down and got off the train, I may never talk to these people again because of how they felt about me and my views. And I thought to myself, this guy I've known for like over 50 years. And so now I'm going to lose a friend over this discussion. Not worth it.
No, it's not, and it's a little difficult for me because I have been very prominent in my
Yep.
community and outspoken with my books and with my formerly on my radio program, so I can't hide.
Yeah.
And some people really have their nose bent out of shape, and that's just that's how that works, whether you're left or right. I mean, if you're prominent and you're outspoken, you're gonna some people are gonna get peeved. But I don't I agree with you entirely about friendships. I mean, it's not worth it. It's not to do that. um, certainly that's been my experience.
I'm with you 100%. So
So
I,
anyway,
I imagine I'll rather than further talking about my topic, the topic of the day. So do you have a prediction for tonight?
well, I
Or
mean,
not tonight. I may
thank
not
you
say
for
tonight.
tonight. Hopefully tonight. Well, it may not be, but I believe that President Trump is going to win. I think that there's all kinds of shenanigans going on out there. There's been some, pretty serious instances of intimidation and voter suppression and voter fraud. But I think because Trump has shined such a light on it, it's not going to be as pervasive as it might otherwise be. Just before we went on the air, I heard a very troubling piece of information, which I can't verify, and I don't think it's really serious, but something leaked out of the Biden camp saying that at some point tonight, if the media decides that he won, he's going to accept it and he's going to go out and start forming a government, which to me is like, I mean, that's a coup d'état. That's and plus the ground has been set for that with all this talk about Trump not refusing to accept the results of the election. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's possible. It's plausible. I don't think Biden himself would do that. He's been around for a long time. I don't think he'd stoop that low. I think he'll accept it and he'll, if he's lost. But these are volatile times. I mean, there's been a lot of strange things going on between COVID and between the rioting and all that. Who knows? I mean, I just
Wouldn't you agree? I think we'd probably both agree that it would be better for the country for this election to be a blowout one way or the other.
oh, absolutely. And I personally think that that Trump is going to do that. I think he's going to rack up enough electoral votes before midnight that he will be able to say that he's won, even if there are states that are going to keep counting, because he'll have the electoral votes. And I think that he's going to do better in probably all the states. Who knows? I think even in my own home state of Massachusetts, I think he's going to do better. I mean, this morning early, I went driving around to some of the polling places just to see what was going on, and people were out there heavily. And I rolled down my window and played Red Kingdom really loudly, and people are like, "Yeah," waving. And
Ah,
I, these were not Biden voters. Let's just put it that way.
interesting.
That's
Yeah, I'm anxious.
anecdotal. I get that, but
Yeah. I'm anxious to see the results. It'll be
yeah, of
interesting.
course. I mean, let's God willing. I mean, we'll get the results very soon. To sort of a peaceful transition either way.
Hopefully you're right.
All right, Fred. Well, listen, I really appreciate talking with you.
My
Why
pleasure.
don't we talk further? I mean, send me a note.
Sure. I will. I'll get you something. You have my email, I believe, and
I
I'll
don't
be
think I
happy
do.
to.
I don't think I do, but mine is my name, Charles Moscowitz at gmail.com. I don't mind telling you that.
Okay. And I will send you something and we can continue the conversation.
Oh,
Great to talk to you.
that's fantastic. And Fred, do you want to let my listeners and viewers know where they can get your book and where they can find out information about you and your business?
Best information for me is at Fred, F-R-E-D, Gleeck, Gleeck, at fredgleeck.com is really the best place. And it's fredgleeck at gmail.com as well.
Excellent. Well, Fred, it's been a great pleasure meeting you and talking with you, and I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.